Benvenuti and welcome to another episode of Dimmi di Più, or actually it's live at 5 in the Dimmi di Più kitchen with Louise. I'm Louise. And grab your favorite cocktail if you don't already have one. I'm having a little Pinot Grigio in my martini glass that's going to be a wine glass tonight. So today it's all about panzanella, which is a traditional dish from the Tuscany region. And so, what's interesting about this dish, Dina taught me this how to make it. So, I'm sharing Dina's recipe. So, Dina's lived in the Tuscany region for more than 30 years, but she's from Puglia. So, there is a little taste of Puglia in this recipe. The bread is generally Tuscan bread. I can't find it anywhere here. It's the bread in Tuscany when you buy it at the grocery store. It's not packaged in plastic. The crust is really pretty hard. The inside has a texture that's somewhat coarse. And so that's the bread that traditionally would be used in this dish. However, we don't have that available. And Dina puts her little Puglia spin on the panzanella and uses what's called frizzelle. So I already sprinkled this with water. I'll show you how to do that in a second. But here's the package. So here's the frizzelle package. And it looks like it is hard. Let me show you this. It is like hard. It kind of looks like a bagel, and it's baked twice, and it's hard as a rock. I mean, can you hear that? That's the stuff. That's what we use. So this frizzelle actually is from Calabria, which is the southernmost part of Italy before you get to Sicily. And Puglia is not that far from Calabria. And so they use this in Puglia, and hence why Dina uses it. Okay. So
Louise, just want to let you know that Cindy and Linda are both here. Linda asked where your commentator was, which is why I felt comfortable interrupting you.
So my commentator is here. I like to call her my comment moderator. And welcome, Linda and Cindy. So glad that you guys are here. So this is like crazy. It seems so counterintuitive, but this is what. So what I did before we went on camera is I put about 250 grams. So I measured this. It's the same amount of grams that I'm using for the tomato. So those of you who want to recreate this, it's like the bread and the tomato combination is equal. So this is what you do. You get that hard ass bread. Oops, excuse me. Probably shouldn't say that. And you sprinkle water directly on the bread. This seems so counterintuitive. I know. It's like, who puts water on bread? Well, we do when it's this hard because we want to get it soft and soaky. So there's that.
Lower the camera just so you know, because I think they couldn't see it.
Good job. So here's what I'm doing. Sprinkling water on the bread. And so since this needs to sit and soak for like 30 minutes, I actually started this before we went live to save a little time so that, watching bread soak up water is like watching paint dry. Not the most exciting thing around. So you can see that some of this is already kind of getting soft and breaky uppy. So we're going to pretend like this hasn't been soaking for 30 minutes until we need to pretend otherwise. So I'm going to put that aside. This soaks for 30 minutes at least. And now that is soaking, then you're going to slice up a red onion, and which again I did before we went live. I'm soaking this red onion in some cold water because I think it takes a little bit of that bite out of the onion, because this onion is going to be raw and go straight into the panzanella, which I'll show you in a minute. So there's that. Let's put the camera down on. Look how pretty this is. This is like one of the things I've learned from Dina and also my other Italian friends who show me how to cook, Giovanni and Caterina, is it's all about the color. And speaking of which, the other thing that goes in the panzanella is cucumber. Again, I did a quick little skinning of the outside of the cucumber and then sliced it. So we're going to put that aside. That's going to go into the salad in a minute. So we have sliced red onion, sliced cucumber. The other thing that goes into the panzanella is going to be tomatoes. So these came out of the garden. The whole point of panzanella and why it's so traditional and a yummy thing to have during the summertime is because you have access to the fresh tomatoes. So you can see that I have the little small ones. And look at this guy. It's an heirloom tomato. I've never grown these before, but I pulled it off the stem. Even though it's green, it came off the stem easily, so I'm thinking it was ripe and ready. So we're gonna do some quick little slicing and dicing on this tomato while the bread soaks a little bit, and then I'm going to show you what to do with the bread. So, any questions or?
So while you were going through those things, Rachel says hi. Lots of eyes on that one.
Oh,
And then Cindy says, "All good with the bread. I wanna." She likes watching paint dry.
oh, that is artist Cindy, so she probably does like watching paint dry, so she's okay with the bread thing. Speaking of which, this is where I found this bread. I just did a Google search for frizzelle and then ordered it online because I couldn't find it at the grocery store. If you happen to have bread stick around your house long enough where it actually goes stale and gets dry, by all means use it up in panzanella. Dina makes all of her bread homemade, so there is never any bread left over at her house. So she just buys from the store the frizzella prepackaged, hard and ready to go. Which I did the same thing because I love bread and I never have it left over. And if I do have any left over, it's not enough to make panzanella. So I just make breadcrumbs with it, which makes the best breadcrumbs. Katarina does the same thing with their bread, although some of their dog gets the hard bread. They have a dog that eats stale hard bread. It's hilarious. I think it's an Italian dog. Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. What else can I tell you about the panzanella? Oh, here's something else I can tell you about. I want to talk about the bread, the Tuscan bread that I cannot find in St. Louis. And I don't know, maybe y'all live somewhere where there's a bakery where you can get authentic, traditional Tuscan bread. But the Tuscan bread is different than the bread in the other parts of Italy. They do not use any salt in their bread. So that actually, it goes back centuries, back in the day when salt was a very rare commodity and only the very wealthy had salt. And so the peasants would make their bread without salt. And so that tradition still is carried out today. Love the Italians with their traditions. And they do not use salt when they make their bread, which is another interesting thing about all of the recipes and the food in Italy is a lot of it, the simplicity. It's peasant food. It is simple. You use fresh ingredients. It's just a few ingredients, and it's so delicious. So it's one of the things that I really appreciate about their culture and the food is the simplicity, and it's all about the color. It's all about the freshness, and just getting it out of your own garden. Or a lot of the Italians don't have like small little gardens. They grow their tomatoes in pots on their patios, terrazza, their outdoor patios. So I think I got all the tomatoes, almost all of them.
Just one more thing, Jana Goldstein says hi with a big red heart.
Oh, hi, Hannah. How are you?
Hannah.
Are you making this stuff, Hannah? Are you going to buy this at the markets in Philly and make this? Yeah. So I've known Hannah since she was like 18 months old. We've done a lot of baking and cooking together over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so fun. So now she's married and doing this in her own household. Crazy.
Hannah, I'm sorry that I mispronounced your name. I won't get it wrong again, but I'm glad you're here.
All right, so here's our tomatoes for the panzanella. There we go. They'll just cut in small pieces. I mean, if you go to the grocery store, find like the tastiest tomatoes you can find if you're not growing your own. You can use the large ones. You just cut them up into pieces. So this is the size of pieces that I'm using tonight because these are the size of the tomatoes I have. So now we're ready. I'm going to show you how to deal with the bread. I don't need that bowl. Put that aside. Okay, so this bread actually has been sitting and soaking in water for about 30 minutes, maybe a little longer. I might need to add some more. Can you guys see this? Can you see what I'm doing here? Yeah.
Okay.
So you can see that it's softened up quite a bit. And now what we're going to do is just break it up into little pieces into this big bowl. So it's kind of gummy. It's almost like you've had some baby without any teeth, like soaking on a dry old bagel for days. It's kind of interesting, the texture and the way it looks. Actually, let me move this to here and this to here so y'all can see what's going on here. Can you see this? This bowl is like the Grand Canyon, but I'm gonna when I put all these ingredients in, we're gonna need that big old bowl to hold them because we're gonna mix it by hand. So I wish y'all were here to help me peel this apart, make it go faster. Oh, so you know what? I guess you know what I did. I made this earlier so that we could do what we did last week, and that is demo how to make it and then not have to wait for it to rest. Because with the panzanella, once you pull it together, it does need to sit for at least 30 minutes to a couple of hours. Overnight is good too. This is a yummy little salad to have with your lunch. You know, I'm thinking like you could open up a can of tuna and eat tuna on the side of this panzanella. And
Is there a historical reference to panzanella?
in terms of like, other than it being like a peasant food and been around forever, and it's like, you know, with peasants and food shortages,
Yeah,
it's
so
like
bread was
you
easy
use
to
bread
make
and it goes stale quickly because
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah,
without
there it
plastic
goes.
bags and no preservatives.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So this is one way of using the stale bread, because it's one of the interesting things. It's like you just kind of think about over the centuries, you know, famine and the shortages and not
Right.
having access to basically the food processing that preserves and that we have today. That wasn't always the case. So a lot of these dishes are, as a result, and still used today without all that processing. So oh my gosh, this bowl is so big. Can you see what I'm doing here? So I'm just breaking up this hard bread into little pieces that have been soaking, and it almost looks like the crumbs are like when you're making a dressing at Thanksgiving when you soak the bread before it gets stuffed into the turkey. It's similar to that texture and that size. So that's what this looks like. And then once this is all done, then I'll show you what we're gonna do. We're just gonna like pull those onions out of the cold water, and again, I'm letting them soak in the cold water because they help take a little bit of that red onion bite out of the onion taste. And I kept these cut in slices, so they're like little small slices. I guess if you were interested, you could cut them smaller. But you know what I like about this size? They're easy to pick out if you don't want to eat the onions. So if somebody's eating them panzanella, wants the onion flavor but doesn't really want to bite into a raw onion, because you're going to be in a meeting later that doesn't require Zoom, you may not want to smell like a red onion. So the red onion goes in with the bread. We're going to pretend like all the bread has been crumbled up in here. We're going to crumble some more. There we go. And then the sliced up cucumber, so it gets skinned first and then sliced. Cucumber goes in. And we're going to put the tomatoes in. Again, if you use 200 grams of tomatoes, you use 200 grams of bread. 250 grams of tomatoes, 250 grams of bread. We're going to use a little vinegar. So traditionally you could use white wine vinegar. I don't have any white wine vinegar, but I do have apple vinegar, and actually Dina uses apple vinegar. So guess what? Louise does what Dina does. So we're going to pour some of that vinegar in. I used about a third of a cup. That's about 60 grams if you cook and measure your things using grams. And then that gets mixed together by hand.
Julie from St. Louis wants to know, is it apple cider vinegar or is it?
Yeah, it's apple cider vinegar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Great question, great clarification. I called it apple vinegar, but it's apple cider vinegar. I called it apple vinegar because Dina calls it aceto di mele, which is the word for apple in Italian. So that gets all thrown into one bowl, and then y'all know my thing about this olive oil. Yes, we're gonna pour a healthy dose of olive oil on the mix. Then everything always gets salted because that's how we do. Nice healthy dose of the salt. There we go. Yes. Oh my gosh. Look how quick this is, y'all. I mean, like when the bread's soaking, you could be doing something else, like watching paint dry. And then we just salt, pepper, lots of pepper, lots of fresh ground black pepper is what I'm using in this one. And then you just get in there with your hands and mix it all together. There we go. And then this needs to sit for a minimum of 30 minutes. 2 hours would be great. Overnight's even better because you could have some after a couple hours and then any leftovers could go into your lunch the next day. Which, ooh, yeah, that's awesome. Let me clean up my hands. And then I will show you. I made one earlier, so it has been sitting for 2 hours, and we will taste it and share our observations with you all and how it turned out. And luckily, I don't know, Julie my comment moderator, might tell us the truth if it wasn't good, but we'll see. Let's get a couple plates out, let's try it out. Okay, so here we go. And, oh, I just remembered, I almost forgot the last little bit. Once it's all mixed together, grab a few little leaves of fresh basil. Smells amazing. You know, it's not summer without basil and tomatoes and put together. In a lot of ways, it's so funny to me. I think this salad is like a deconstructed bruschetta.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like it's basil, it's the bread, it's olive oil, and tomatoes. But
Totally.
instead of putting it on a little piece of bread,
Totally.
we put it in a bowl.
Yep.
And oops, and this goes on top. Just tear it up. Because one of the things with basil, you do need to tear it. Otherwise, if you cut it, it gets bruised and turns brown. But if you tear it, it does not turn brown. So we'll just put a few little pieces of the basil in there, mix it up again by hand. Voila! This is it. This is our panzanella. Let me give this a little stir. And let's get a little tongs. Stir this up. Yes, here we go. Look at those colors. So we have the red tomatoes, we have yellow, kind of red orange tomatoes, and then the other kind, what are they called? Heirloom tomatoes, which come in all kinds of shades. Kind of funky. And then let's dish this up on a little plate. I'm thinking this would be so yummy with some tuna. Actually, just right out of the can, just add some tuna to it.
Yeah, that would be really good.
Such a yummy lunch.
Totally.
Oops, or dinner when it's hot.
That one's mine.
Yeah, when it's hot in the summertime, having a light, easy, quick dinner is the way to go. So there we go. That's what it looks like, all mixed in together. We're gonna get a couple of forks. We're gonna try this out. There we go. My taste tester, also my comment moderator. All right, y'all, here we go. Little bread. I want a bite of all the textures and all the flavors together. So I'm gonna get a little chunk of the bread with a little bit of the cucumber.
Okay, before you close out, Lisa has a question like, no way, she wants to know basil info. More about basil.
More about basil?
I waited until your mouth was full to ask you that. Sorry about that.
You must have been away this in a previous life.
Lisa Donahue. That was funny. Lisa Donahue, I also think is a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
This is
So
really good.
So
Oh my God.
there you go. Can
Wow.
you hear that? Julie thinks it's delicious.
Wow.
I think it's delicious.
Finally,
It's
my
rude
mouth
that
is
I
full.
have food in my mouth and I'm talking. Lisa, there's a lot of panzanella here, so I'll be bringing some over.
Lisa says bruising basil. She did not know that was a thing. That's what
That's
it was.
the thing.
That's what she's saying.
So you want to tear basil instead of cut it because it gets bruised and turns black or brown. So here's the panzanella. Ooh, there's one of those tomatoes.
Oh my God, this is
One of the
amazing.
tomatoes the squirrels didn't get. And then, oh my gosh, this is gonna be tomorrow for lunch. Guess what I'm having? Tuna and panzanella. All right, you guys, that's it for today. What was that? 20 minutes. We pulled together this delicious salad, and you can see that it's enough to feed at least 4 people, if not more. Have a great evening. Ciao for now. Buona serata. Next week, I have something written down. Good thing I wrote it down, otherwise I'd forget already. And see you next week. Ciao.
Okay, yeah, I think I need to like prepare some jokes. I do. I'm sorry.
I think that would be hilarious.
I always think like I'm gonna come up with it on the fly, which I can do, but wow.
Yeah, you could have come in with jokes on the fly.
Well, for example, how come the lesbian didn't think of tuna? Well, I'm sorry, that was another thing. All right, I didn't flesh it out. Just saying. Oh no, we can make fun of my sexuality. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. How come my moderator, my sous chef didn't think of that?
Yeah. But are you still on? Are you?